One company's relatively simple equation could be a game changer. Carbon Sciences says 25% of the CO2 emissions from coal can produce 30% of the world's liquid fuel supply. And now the California company is trumpeting its so-called smart particle patent, what could lead to an array of commercial applications. At least that is what the company is hoping. Joining us now once again is Byron Elton. He is president and CEO of Carbon Sciences from California this morning. Byron, great to have you back with us.
Thanks, Tyler. Good to be here.
Glad you got through the wildfire mess out there. I know it was a little rough for you.
Pretty hard in Santa Barbara.
Let's talk about the soon-to-be major announcement and what exactly goes into smart particle technology.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody that's looking to recycle carbon dioxide into fuel, it is a beautiful process, but it's fiendishly complicated. And there's two things that everybody runs into, two major challenges that speak to scalability. That is to take it to be a commercially viable technology. The first is cost, and the second is time. Cost relates directly to the enzymes themselves, the biocatalysts that stitch together the hydrogen molecules and the carbon molecules to make hydrocarbons. Very good at what they do, but they don't last very long and they're expensive. So when you have to replenish them on a regular basis, it becomes very, very expensive. The second is time. That's just the kinetics involved in the reaction. How long does it take? The longer that it takes, the more problematic it is in terms of making fuel at a reasonable price. And so this particular technology is a nano-scale reactor. Now this is a physical housing, it's a physical environment where these enzymes reside. It's very dynamic and they can continue to do what they do very well, very efficiently, more quickly. They last a long time. And that is the basis of this particular patent, which we believe we'll be filing next week. And it really addresses those scales in a way that give us a high degree of confidence we now have a direct path to commercial viability.
Now, as you said, Byron, this is remarkably complex technology. Even the theory itself is complicated for the uninitiated. I want to ask you what this will mean to the presumed equation I mentioned earlier. 25% of CO2 emissions from coal, 30% of the world's liquid fuel supply. Is that still holding even with these advancements coming in?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, we now have a higher degree of confidence that we can do that. Anybody that is addressing the great challenges of climate and energy need to be asked a couple of questions. One is, what's the energy output that you're using to make the fuel? In our case, it takes place at essentially room temperature, atmospheric pressure, therefore very low energy. Secondly is, how much of this stuff can you make? I mean, if you can't make, these are enormous challenges. I mean, the demand for energy, as you just said, for instance, in China and what's happening there, is extraordinary. So if you can't,
almost mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling. So if you can't, 50% more than it even is today, which is at an all-time high in 20 years. If you can't make a lot of it, then it's not going to make a big impact. So with this particular technology, our technology, I'll give you an example of a coal-fired plant. They're a great example. They're the largest emitters of CO2 in the world. They've got the biggest kick me sign on them in the world right now. A medium coal-fired plant, a 500 megawatt coal-fired plant, typically is emitting about 5,000 tons of CO2 every single day. With our technology, that coal-fired plant could produce 750,000 gallons of gasoline every single day without emitting any CO2. That's a lot of gasoline and that's a lot of scale. The other element, and one of the reasons that people are describing our potential, our technology and its potential implementation as the most powerful fuel technology in the world in terms of renewable and sustainable fuel, is the fact that it fits into the existing infrastructure. So what we make is gasoline. You take it out and put it in your car right now. It's jet fuel, it's diesel. And any new technology that has a greater degree of success if it can fit into the existing infrastructure. In our case, the same supply chain, the same infrastructure, and the same vehicles. So those are some of the compelling dynamics that we bring to the table that's resonating very, very well in this area.
Does this, though, Byron, have a shelf life to some degree when we talk about what seems to be the inevitable electrification of our transportation industry here in the U.S.? One idea is to go through a bridge fuel. The other is to somehow get directly to electrification through remarkable advancements in the grid that are required. So say that's 30, 40 years out when we're potentially off of a liquid fuel cycle.
Yeah,
is that the definitive end of this?
Potentially. I mean, this could very well be an intermediary measure. What we do know is that airplanes run on jet fuel. They don't run on solar just yet. They don't run on wind, not for very long. And so for right now, this particular approach is the most compelling technology to get us to wherever we're going to be. I think the ultimate solution, a lot of people would agree, probably solar. We're not there yet. It's going to take a long time. But for now, the ability to mitigate all this CO2, and now you've got all this CO2, what do you do with it? Your choices are, well, we can compress it, store it somewhere, hide it. We, along with a lot of people, think that that's fraught with all kinds of potential problems. We say, hey, here's a technology that allows you to take that seemingly inexhaustible supply of CO2 that we have and we're going to continue to have, turn it into something valuable. So it's not an expense for a company, it becomes a revenue stream, or perhaps a valuable product that they can use for themselves.
Now, just within your company's perspective, Byron, to Carbon Sciences, how closely do you feel tied to the process of carbon capture, and if not storage, the capture portion of this and the advancement that the coal industry is trying to make right now?
Yeah, very tied into it. I mean, obviously, we need the carbon dioxide as a feedstock. And so and as you know, as we sit here today, it's almost 30 billion metric tons of CO2 being emitted, going to 40, going to even beyond that. And so, yeah, we need the carbon dioxide to be able to use it. Now, the question becomes, if your only solution was to then spend a lot of money having to compress it and hide it, or turning it into something that becomes a revenue stream, or something you can use for yourself, the economics will dictate how quickly and how inexpensively that carbon can be captured. And whether somebody was required to capture it, which could happen through legislation, or because it was a good idea, we stand at the ready to say, here we are with our technology, and let's talk.
Byron, final question. Carbon Sciences says that two of the keys here are fast reaction time and also what you alluded to, industrial scale-up. Where are you now on scale? And also, what transition do you see in your feedstock? You talked about the energy intensity here once you do get up to scale.
Well, this new technology, this nano-scale reactor, addresses both of those issues.
Okay.
It allows for us to produce these hydrocarbons in this fuel much simpler, much faster, and much cleaner. In the absence of this technology, we would not be commercially viable. And in terms of the kinetic reaction, when we first started our prototype, it was 8 to 10 hours for that reaction to take place. We're under 30 minutes, as low as 10 minutes. Dr. Aslam, the inventor of this technology, thinks he'll get well below that. We are already at a point, both in terms of total turnover number for the enzymes and kinetic reaction time, where we are commercially viable. The higher we get on the TTN and the quicker we get on the reaction time, it's just going to make it that much more compelling and that much more attractive.
And the feedstock issue? The
feedstock issue, again, it's CO2. Now the question is, what does the purity need to be? How much does it need to be scrubbed? Those are all issues we're working on with our potential partners. But lots of it, more of it available, and we're the one technology that say, give it all that you've got. In the example you used, a third of the world's liquid affordable fuel needs we could supply with less than a half of the coal-fired emissions right now.
As we said, this could be a game changer. Byron Elton is President and CEO of Carbon Sciences. Once that patent is approved, and we expect it to be approved, let us know.
Absolutely.
Always good to have you back in Washington,
Thanks,
Byron.
Tyler.
Thanks for joining us on what is a very busy trip, I know.